Welcome to the Generative Edge, the podcast that brings you the latest news and events in the world of generative AI. I'm Stephanie, and I'm a consultant at Deloitte Central Europe.
I'm Brandon, and I'm the Natural Language Processing and Generative AI Practice Lead for Deloitte Central Europe.
And we are so excited because today we are going to be talking about the latest news and events in the world of generative AI.
Woohoo!
To be honest, I love these episodes.
Yeah.
I love when we just get to talk about the crazy things that we hear in the news. And yeah, let's just get right into it. So
Perfect.
What have you heard in the news lately about generative AI?
Oh, so much stuff.
I know.
I get it in my email inbox every morning.
Oh my God, me too, me too. Well, what's like the coolest thing you've heard?
Okay, so I'm not going to talk about the algorithm updates and like associated memory updates and that kind of thing.
All the techie stuff
Everyone
that
would be
he loves.
so unbelievably bored. Maybe one cool thing would be these like nuclear reactors, small modular nuclear reactors.
Okay, you're definitely going to have to break that down because I know nothing about nuclear reactors.
Okay, why does this relate to generative AI, right? So generative AI and other large AI models basically require huge amounts of power to run. And they're all running in these giant data centers, like literal city blocks large of just like computers and processors and memory that are, churning out the tokens that we all get from ChatGPT or whatever else. So these tools require lots of power, lots of compute. And lots of cooling, by the way.
I was going to say, that sounds hot and steamy down
like
there.
Millions of gallons of water are like being pumped through these systems to keep them cool. So anyway, one of the cool updates recently was that Google basically entered a partnership with another company called, I think it's pronounced Kyros, if it's like Greek or not, or Kairos or something like that. Where they're building these small modular reactors in order to meet the energy demand created by having all of these AI-based services.
Okay.
So a small modular reactor is cool because the problem with nuclear energy is that it's like really expensive, and it takes a really, really long time to build the facilities that can generate nuclear power.
Okay.
And a more or less recent development is that small nuclear reactors can be created and chained together to create power. They're faster to build, they're cheaper to build, and they can be moved. That's like
modular. There we go.
Exactly. That's the game changer. So if you know that like for whatever reason in one particular area you don't have enough power from the power grid, or you have really, really expensive power coming from the power grid and you want to be able to target energy for some specific purpose, then moving a small nuclear site to wherever you need that energy is really advantageous. Okay. At this point, I think Google is building, 7 nuclear reactors or something specifically because they need to power these AI systems and their data centers. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so my face is probably reading, and I know this is an audio format. Okay, not knowing anything about nuclear energy or how it works or anything, that sounds scary to me. And let me tell you why. Because again, I'm going to claim ignorance here, so I might be talking out of my butt. But anyway, the fact that these nuclear modular units can move around sounds really cool, but also sounds dangerous. And the fact that like a giant tech corporation has their own nuclear power plant, like to me it just feels a little bit like scary end of days vibe.
I hope not.
So again, I genuinely hope not, and maybe that's just ignorance talking here. But what is the vibe? Like, is this something that is normal? Is this cool? Like, how would you interpret this for the layperson?
I think, to be honest, it seems like it's the future. And I won't say that I'm like an expert in nuclear energy or anything like that, or energy production. But a lot of work has gone into making these systems more safe. In some cases, these small nuclear reactors these small modular reactors can go for 7 days without any intervention, even if they have a meltdown.
Oh, wow.
And they have like additional fail safes. So some of them run on like molten salt, so that well, okay, maybe I shouldn't get into. Maybe I know more than I thought I did.
Which is usually the case. But
sorry.
What's the quick version of that?
The quick version is the systems are much more safe. They produce less waste. They're more energy efficient than older reactors. I think at this point they're referring to them as Generation 4 nuclear reactors. So the technology that we use to generate power from nuclear fissile material has gone through generations of upgrades, kind of like how GPT goes through generations of upgrade, right? Or any software.
Technology is always changing and evolving. That we know.
Exactly. And like the reason that I think this is kind of the future is because, for one, the United States is putting billions of dollars into startups that are creating these small modular reactors.
Okay.
So the government obviously has a vested interest in creating power out like that can supplement the power grid specifically for this purpose, because we know that there will be additional energy requirements in the future. And it's also really useful for decarbonization of energy. Poland, for example, it's one of the, I think they take like 70% of their power from coal. And it's like one of the most highly carbonized energy sectors in the world. And they just recently approved 24 of these reactors to help supplement their power grid. And because it has such a smaller carbon footprint than burning coal, it really does make sense to try and hit your sustainability goals by switching to nuclear in that way.
Okay.
Not everybody's convinced about it. Like Germany, for instance, is betting on other types of energy, fusion, but not necessarily on nuclear reactors. And I think it'll be interesting to see kind of how that evolves. But yeah, the big news for this is that generative AI is so power hungry that we need to create nuclear reactors that can move.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of interesting.
I mean, it's definitely interesting. Like I said, I'm a little wary of it. Again, claiming ignorance here, but at the same time, if it is helping supplement the power grid, because like we said, generative AI is a hungry beast that needs to be fed. The more eco-friendly ways that we can do that, the better.
Yep.
Just full stop.
Exactly.
I've also heard, so switching gears a little bit, I've also heard that the Nobel Prizes were like recently announced, and I know you were excited about it. So why don't you tell us what you were excited about?
Oh my God, I sound like the weirdest like nerd person
and
ever.
that's why we love you, and that's why you're on this podcast.
Oh no, I promise I'm like more or less a normal person, I think.
Most
in real
days.
life. Yeah, okay. So this one was really interesting because typically when you award Nobel Prizes, they go to scientists who work in the field that prize is for. So there's like a Nobel Prize for peace and for physics and chemistry. And the weird thing this year is that the Nobel Prize for physics and chemistry did not go to physicists or chemists.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they actually went to computer scientists. So,
ooh, controversial.
Strange, but it actually makes sense if you think about it. I'll explain why. So, the Nobel Prize in Physics went to John Hopfield and Jeffrey Hinton, and they basically laid the groundwork for artificial intelligence. And in certain
those names sound familiar, actually, so that's good.
Yeah, they've been working in the field for forever, and I believe what John Hopfield did was something about associative memory in like large neural networks, basically making it easier to solve certain problems with AI that weren't possible with existing algorithms at the time. And Jeffrey Hinton was also working on these types of algorithms. So what happened in physics is that these algorithms were used to train models to detect anomalies in data. So like readings from the cosmic microwave background, or from radiation coming from space and light coming from distant galaxies, that kind of thing.
That's cool.
And also to discover new physics from the particle colliders. So like at CERN or whatever. And the fact that we needed to use AI to detect those anomalies and to discover new physics, that's what made it such a game changer. Because these were things that were like not intuitively easy to calculate or to detect. And artificial intelligence based on these algorithms developed by John Hopfield and Jeffrey Hinton made it possible. So that's why they got that prize. For the Nobel Prize in Chemistry, this one is actually probably more revolutionary, at least for the future of like human health. health.
Okay.
So David Baker was given half of the prize for computational protein design. And the other half was also given to Demi Hasabi for protein structure prediction. So he used something basically like it's the same architecture actually as a language model. It's called a transformer. You input some data and you get a prediction of output. And what he was able to do was input the like either the DNA sequence or the amino acid structure of a protein and predict a 3D model of how that protein would look in space.
Cool.
So how it would fold. It like basically predicts all the 3D points and then it creates a physical model of what a protein would look like. This is really, really difficult work to do. I think hemoglobin or something was like maybe one of the first proteins to be like the structure was verified long ago, maybe 70 years ago or something. And between then and 2019, I think we'd only verified the structure of like 2,000 proteins. And now that this model has been around, I think they call it's AlphaFold, and we're AlphaFold 3. It has predicted the structure of more than 200,000 proteins.
Oh, wow.
And it's really important to know how these proteins are structured because their shape tells you how they interact with people's bodies and with drugs and that sort of thing. So it's huge. And we expect that to continue growing over the next few decades. There are so many different combinations of amino acids that you can have more proteins, more possible proteins in the world than there are atoms in the universe because of this combinatorial. It's crazy. So knowing which ones are going to be good candidates for drugs, knowing which ones are going to be interacting with certain biological systems, super important, super revolutionary. It's really cool that they were able to do this. And they weren't, they have some background in chemistry, but they were computational experts. So, yeah.
See, this particularly excites me, again, as someone whose university degree is in theater and acting. But both of my parents work in the healthcare field. And so when I hear about advancements like this that would help people, create life-saving potentially drugs or just coming up with different ways to treat diseases, things like that. It's just so cool. First of all,
it's very cool.
Yeah. And it really makes me happy because I know a lot of the things that we talk about with tech are like, how do we help our clients, which is super important. How do we make this company more money, which is also, I guess, important. But when I hear stories like this, where we're using this technology, quote unquote, for good, to really just genuinely help humans, and I don't know, maybe even animals, I don't know. But like the idea that we are using generative AI to help with these tasks, like makes me all warm and fuzzy inside.
Exactly.
Like this is the stuff where I'm like, yes, we're doing something good for the planet. Okay.
Exactly.
We're not just taking all of the ample resources for nothing.
To make LinkedIn posts.
But I think it's really amazing. And I'm glad that these scientists got credit for the work that they're doing and getting that level of recognition, because of course then it puts it in the public consciousness as well that that's possible to do with this technology. What else could be possible? And so I think it's really great. Obviously Nobel, nice.
Great.
small organization that no one's heard of, but I'm really happy that these scientists are all getting credit for that work. So that's really cool. I do want to mention one other story that's a little bit of a vibe shift, maybe.
Go for it.
So we're talking about tech for good right now, that we're like helping the human experience in healthcare. I heard a story, it was a little while ago, but I think the results have just recently come out. There was a mayoral candidate in, I believe it was Wyoming, that basically, that he basically was saying that he was running for mayor. But he wouldn't necessarily be the one governing.
Oh my gosh.
But that he wanted basically ChatGPT to govern for him. And, seeing it as a neutral arbiter to be able to make decisions, things like that. I'm looking at your face right now. I know this is an audio medium. So
if you could see the eye roll that I'm doing.
So let's talk about it a little bit. So why would that be a bad idea, just generally speaking? No, again, nothing against this person who's coming up with a very innovative idea potentially, but why is this not such a good idea?
So language models as of yet and all AI, it's not capable of any kind of like critical thinking. It is subject to bias because of its training data. It doesn't have access to new information.
Well, it
There's
doesn't make
so
decisions,
it
right?
doesn't you're not supposed to make decisions using generative AI because it has none of these capabilities that need to be taken into account when making a decision,
Mm-hmm.
especially one that affects the lives of other people, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to be governing, oh gosh. Oh,
It's a
please
lot.
don't use generative AI for decision making. That's crazy.
Yeah. And I think what really struck me about this story is, I mean, it's definitely a novel idea. Let's just
Mm,
say that. I don't know
hmm
how many times this use case has been put into practice. But to me, it was interesting that this person was very, or this candidate was like very openly talking about it,
Yeah.
right? Like it wasn't
And very
like,
confident in it.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it didn't, maybe it was a gimmick, I don't know what you would call it, but like it seemed like something he genuinely believed in, right?
Hmm
So the level of understanding that you would need to have about how these models work
Yeah.
in order to have that level of confidence that it can do the task
Yeah.
seems to be a bit mismatched
Oh, for
here.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
overly confident, but
Uh-huh.
maybe not grounded in fact-based
Exactly.
information.
Actually,
Okay.
Deloitte has this policy, or not a policy, but like a definition of what it considers trust in AI.
Okay.
They did this huge survey, and then they determined that like what they consider to be trust is two things. One is a high level of competence,
Mhm.
so that's understanding how it works and what it can do and what it can't do. And the second one is like the correct intent. So
Uh-huh.
it, depending on what you're using the AI for or whatever, that will affect how much trust you can put into it
Mhm.
and how much trust other people are going to put into the decision making capabilities of that person who's using it to support their knowledge work, basically.
Yeah.
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 So
Well,
I would recommend having a high level of competence,
so
please.
spoiler alert, this person did not win their primary. So this person is not going to potentially be the mayor of a city in the
Yeah.
United States. But I think what's interesting to me is that apparently OpenAI, because they're the creators of the program ChatGPT that we're
hmm
all using every day, they were not super psyched about this either.
Yeah.
So I don't know
Oh,
if you
right.
can talk a little bit about
Well, it's
that.
against their policies.
Yeah.
For one, they have a policy that is like none of their products can be used to engage in political campaigning or lobbying.
Yeah, which makes sense to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I don't know how far that goes in like, making marketing materials or something. I would say that it's probably prohibited by them. So the fact that somebody was saying, I'm going to be using this product to govern, I mean,
Yeah.
they immediately shut down his account. They shut down the account of other politicians who claimed to be using GPT specifically for their campaign, which I think is probably the right decision at this
Yeah.
point. A lot of people, they're not us. They don't, touch generative AI on every single
Oh yeah,
day.
they're not subject matter experts
They're
for
not subject
sure.
matter experts, and not that you need to be an expert to use it for stuff like I don't know, summarizing the news, but if you're going to be using it to govern people, like you need
Just
to have a high level of
well,
competence and understanding.
even that, I
Yeah,
mean, if we're claiming to be subject matter experts here, which we are,
yeah,
I would say just don't
just
use it
don't.
for that.
Yeah. Oh my
Like,
gosh.
let's just avoid any potential weirdness. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, governments and elections, and I mean, this is ripe for misinformation, disinformation.
yeah.
Like, obviously, there's a lot of important elections happening this
hmm
year all across the world. So, this is a major topic of
Yeah.
conversation. But I would say leaving the governing decisions to a generative text model
Mm,
just doesn't sound like a sound strategy, but it
right.
sounds like the constituents of that city also agreed that
Yeah.
that was not a sound
He got like
strategy. So,
3% of the vote or something. So,
yeah, which, that's a tough break. But I think, again, talking about tech for good and all these things,
yeah.
I think it is interesting to come up with these different innovative use cases, but
hmm
I think understanding potential pitfalls and limitations is equally important.
For sure. Yeah.
So let's not run our governments with ChatGPT just yet, at least. But I think that is all the time that we have for today. So thank you again, Brandon, for sharing all the cool news stories that you found, explaining nuclear reactors and protein synthesis for us today.
Maybe I need to change a career. I don't know. I think it's especially poignant for this episode that we say thank you and generate responsibly.
Yes, consume generated content responsibly and generate that content responsibly. Thank you for listening to The Generative Edge, a Deloitte Central Europe and AWS production. Your hosts are Brandon Eychaner, Vyasaraj Kulkarni, and Donovan Spronk. Our show is executive produced by Stephanie Cohen, Vanch Luthra, Ian Masters, and the Deloitte studio in Prague. Head writers are Stephanie Cohen and Brandon Eychaner. Our sound and audio engineer is Wojtek Krasa, who also serves as our editor and videographer. Michał Trusina is our graphic designer. Our marketing and social media managed by Stephanie Cohen and the Deloitte studio in Prague. And our theme song was written and produced by Jakub Vlasek. Don't forget to rate and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in.